let's jump on into today's topic. Why are we talking about this? So, the Untoxic Boss is really a conversation for us to have, and it's also a podcast, but it is a conversation to talk about how to remove toxicity from the workplace. And this is so important to me. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and the keynote speaker had everyone pull out their phones and ask them to go to Google and to type in their search engine or go to any search engine and type in the words, my manager is, or my boss is. And so I open a lot of my keynotes on psychological safety using that same sort of that hack. I tell everybody pull out their phone. And if you can do that now, or go to your search engine and you type in my manager is, my boss is, you might even type in my job is. And what you'll find is the word toxic. Or you might see things like my manager is gaslighting me, they micromanage me, they're getting on my nerves, they're making me sick. See all these sorts of negative adjectives and conversations that people have actually been searching for solutions to deal with toxicity or a toxic leader in the workplace. And so we at Everyday Lead, and one of the keynote addresses that I do and the research that I do is a lot on psychological safety, how to create workplaces where everyone can thrive, in a spot where there's civility, in a workplace where people get along. And another reason this topic is so important to me, growing up, I watched my mom go to work every day in a job that she loved. Like, she retired from Milwaukee County. She was a deputy clerk of court. So she sat in a courtroom every day for over 20 years. And you don't go to court to have a good time. Anyone who is in court and has a trial or has to see a judge, it's because they're in a difficult situation. But my mother loved her job. She loved helping people. And one of the things that she inspired my brothers and I to do is to find careers and find work that we love, and to work in environments and companies that we love being there. And I was really fortunate to have many situations and cultures and environments and work with people that I really cared about, and became a work family. And I feel like today that is not the norm for a lot of people. They don't have or consider the people they work with as part of their family or work family. And they don't talk about work through a place of, I love working here. I love being here. And I don't know what happened. Like, when did that change? When did people stop pursuing close relationships and creating a family environment at work? And it's up to you. It's your choice, right? I don't want to necessarily put my beliefs and ideas on people, but I think it helps because we spend so much time with these people. And so, but what I found over the years, civility and kindness and thoughtfulness and leaders who try to build up people seem to be few and far between. But what I know for sure is that a lot of people define the places that they work and the leaders and the managers they work with as being toxic. And I am on a mission to kind of debunk that, to change that, to create workplaces where we have people who are focused on being an untoxic boss, and that they lead with a sense of creating psychological safety at work. And so what is psychological safety and what is an untoxic boss? A psychological safety is really where a person can be in any environment, at work, on organizations and boards, at clubs, and their book club, and even at home, right there. But particularly at work, they are in a position where they work on a team, or they work in a group, or for a company, where they don't feel a sense of interpersonal threat. They can ask questions, they can make mistakes, they can challenge ideologies, they can call out bias, because the system and the structure in their organization says you can do that and you'll still have safety. You will not lose your job if you challenge me as your leader or you disagree with me. You will not be called out, embarrassed, or isolated for being different or for thinking differently. So that's what psychological safety is, in a general sense. It's really about creating a workplace where people can be creative and innovative, where conflict is okay because we have a structure and there's a healthy way to address it and deal with conflict at work. And don't we all want to work in a place like that? I think some of the places where when I worked in public accounting, I was a state and local tax professional. And one of the things that I cherish most about being there is that I could ask questions, and I could ask questions. I never had to preface it with, oh, this might be a dumb question, because I didn't think it was a dumb question. It was, I needed an answer. And I think a lot of times when we don't have an answer or we don't know something, we find a way to preface it so we don't feel like we're calling ourselves out or others will call us out. Or and a lot of times people don't ask for help and they don't ask for questions because they work in environments where they believe that they're supposed to have all the answers. But we don't. And no one does. But that's the sort of pressure I think we put on ourselves and we put on others. And I even see it in some of the work we do with young professionals, interns, or people with less than 4 years of experience. They don't raise their hands and they don't ask questions. They don't want to have one on one meetings sometimes because they believe that they're supposed to have the answer. They believe that if they ask a question, someone is going to tell them that they should know the answer and that they don't belong. And if it's happening in the young professionals, it's also happening with some of us who have more than 10 or 15 years of experience. And maybe by the time we get into leadership, we put so much pressure on ourselves to have unrealistic expectations about our the knowledge that we bring to new topics or to work in a fast-paced changing environment, then sometimes we may lead people to believe that we think that they should have all the answers. And so that's why we're talking about this topic. And today's particular show is about the double blind dilemma, navigating toxic gender ideologies in corporate leadership. Now, are there some ideologies that you have about women as leaders or gender roles, even as men? We have these ideologies that don't serve us well. But today we're talking about the lens of gender, and we're specifically talking about women. I remember the first time I heard the term the glass cliff, because all I heard before that was, we're going to break the glass ceiling, right? Women are breaking the glass ceiling. They're moving into leadership roles and executive roles like never before, right? There's all of this opportunity. We're not being held back anymore. And then I heard about the glass cliff. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Is this something else that we got to get through? And yes, it is. So the glass cliff is typically when you are given an assignment or you're promoted into a role where everyone expects for you to fail because the people before you who've been in these roles have not been successful. The project is under resourced, underfunded, it's challenging. It's probably a project that needs to be thrown out, possibly, but they're giving it to you. They're giving it to the woman. The department has been having high turnover for years. It's a challenging place to work, but they're going to promote this woman and move her into this role. But they don't have high expectations and they're not going to give her the resources that she needs to be successful. So that's really what a glass cliff is. I have a friend right now who's in a glass cliff assignment. She was selected to be in this role to run operations as the chief. The prior men who ran it never made progress. It's been, kind of bleeding money and funds, and the morale in the group is low. And now she's been given this and expected to turn it around. So that's a glass cliff project. But what is the double blind dilemma? Well, the double blind dilemma is where leaders, especially women and underrepresented racial groups of women and genders, face conflicting expectations and bias. So, what does that mean? It means that Jim can be passionate and loud at work. He might even use profanity, but Susan cannot, right? If Susan is, passionate about her job, she's seen as emotional and unequipped and unable to do her work. So when we think about the double blind dilemma, a lot of women are faced with this, right? Even studies have shown, and this kind of refers to this situation where there's this contradiction and often irreconcilable expectations based on gender and identity. Right? This dilemma arises from societal and organizational stereotypes about gender roles and leadership. In essence, women are in these leadership positions, but they're often find themselves in a no-win scenario. And when I'm studying these things and when I'm coaching women in leadership, sometimes I get off our calls or I'm thinking, is corporate America and leadership and executive roles, are women, are they safe places for us? Right? We thrive to climb the corporate ladder. We get the education and the degrees, we get the experience, we make sure that we have all the experience before we apply for a particular job. And then I start to think, and even recently with some of the things that are going on with women in leadership and university presidents, I think, are they safe places? Should we even be thriving for these particular roles? Because what we also find is we get really sick, right? The stress from these roles, and really not the work itself. It's just trying to do the work, trying to be the CFO, just trying to be in the role. There's so much opposition that women face, and it's little stuff, petty stuff that we're challenged on, right? Our executive presence, our communication style, our ability to lead, how we lead, our leadership styles, certain things such as, if a man is assertive and decisive, but if a woman is assertive and decisive, she's also perceived as being overly aggressive and unfeminine, attracting lots of criticism and backlash. And I hate to say it, it's not just from our male colleagues. We get it from women, right? And we haven't been able to create sustainable support from even ourselves, right? From the women group, the group of women in our organizations to support women who might be assertive, who are decisive, who are passionate about their thoughts and ideas. And so that creates a problem. When we do workshops on psychological safety, I'm going to read to you a couple of things that come up, and you might find or have seen this happen in your workplace. These are just some daily interactions that happen that are part of this double blind dilemma. Here's one scenario. Your team is led by a woman, but a colleague from another department assumes that a man on your team is the leader. I've seen this happen to women in professional services. The woman is the partner, right? The highest ranking professional in the organization. She's in a meeting. I've even seen where the client will defer to the staff, and it's a man. Most of the time, it's a white male, and he's a senior consultant. He doesn't know anything, and that happens to them. Here's another one. A colleague mentions how aggressive and pushy a job candidate seemed to be when she was negotiating her salary. I teach women to negotiate their salary. I think it's an important thing that we need to do. But her advocating for herself is seen as a negative, that she's pushy and aggressive. Over lunch, your colleague says, it'd be great to hire more women, but I worry about us lowering the bar. Your company announces its latest rounds of promotions, and nearly everyone being promoted and moving up is a man. You're in a meeting, and a woman colleague is spoken over or interrupted. And maybe even her idea in another statement was ignored, and one of her male colleagues said the same thing, and he was celebrated. These are the sorts of examples of things that happen to women in leadership across industry. So it could be in professional services, it could be in technology, it can be higher education. And every time I see a woman be promoted to an executive role, and I remember seeing a lot of women becoming university presidents, and I remember always saying, I hope that they allow her to lead. Like, really allow her to lead in her own style, create the strategy for the organization and the direction it should go, and not go looking for things of why she shouldn't be in those roles. And it leads me back to my question again. Is there a safe place in organizations for women to take on significant leadership roles where there's a large amount of visibility? So, what are some of the impacts of stereotypes? How gender stereotypes hinder leadership and development and personal growth. There's a few ways that happens. One of them is limited access to opportunity. So stereotypes can lead to bias in hiring and promotion decisions. For example, women might be overlooked for leadership roles in industries perceived as being traditionally male dominated, which are most of our industries, but such as, technology and engineering, under these assumptions that they lack the necessary skills or assertiveness or toughness to be in those roles. And so there's this thing like we don't want to put a woman in this role because maybe she's not tough enough. And I see this a lot in industries like construction. I mentioned engineering and technology, where there are women still kind of breaking through the glass ceiling. It hadn't even gotten to the glass cliff yet. They're still kind of breaking through into more visible leadership roles. And so these opportunities are limited. I'll even add, US president, right? Being the president of the United States. We still haven't had that happen yet. And we're looking for a candidate that people can all get behind. And even if we all got behind a candidate and we were able to move a woman into the presidency, would she be able to be supported? Right? The sorts of comments about her emotional fitness for it, right? Is she too emotional? The other thing is bias in performance evaluations. I see this all the time. The language that is used, men are use more leadership terms and women as strong leaders, and we use words like women are helpful, great team players. The kind of language that we use sometimes, even women, when describing a woman's capacity to lead. And when we're talking about them in performance evaluations, we see that they may be evaluated differently compared to their male counterparts, right? Leadership traits like assertiveness might be viewed positively for men, but negatively for women, right? Being strong and dedicated is a different term used. And we also find it when men and women start going through expanding their families. So you haven't had children yet. Now, once women and men start getting married, even that language changes, right? The man being a family man is he gets these bonus points for it, where a woman actually gets deductions, right? They start to have conversations. Is she committed to the work? Will she stay in the workplace? Can she take on additional work? Can she travel? And a lot of times those decisions are made without the woman that they're talking about being a part of the conversation. I see that all the time. And we work really closely with our clients to say, I want to support women in a benevolent way, be understanding, but we always want to make sure that the woman's voice is part of that conversation. Self doubt and imposter syndrome comes up all the time, right? Persistent stereotypes can internalize feelings of inadequacy within our women leaders, right? Leading them to feel this sense that they don't belong. And, these individuals may feel that they don't belong in leadership roles because of what they've heard or because they don't see anyone in these roles. And so we're constantly adding things to our resume to demonstrate and prove we need to be here. I just told 3 friends the other day, do not go get a PhD. I'm like, you don't need it, right? You demonstrated in your expertise, the education you currently have, and your certification. I see it often. You see women, and I'll use accounting because I'm really close to that as a profession. They have the highest certificate as a CPA, but then they go and get a CIA and a CISA and your CGMG, like all of these other letters are being added to demonstrate their ability to do their jobs. And then they have multiple master's degrees and executive MBAs and constantly trying to demonstrate where their male counterpart probably just only has an undergraduate degree and maybe a certification. And so that's where that imposter syndrome comes in. That's when I see it the most. When I see people who have multiple degrees, and I'm not disparaging it because I have multiple degrees, but when I see it, I always question like, you have 20 years of experience. Is this a personal goal or is this a goal that you're trying to achieve to demonstrate to others that you belong? Sometimes also the double blind dilemma and how this shows up is kind of this reduced visibility and influence, right? These gender stereotypes can result in women receiving less recognition for their achievements. And how I see that show up is they're all, Jennifer is a great helper, right? Brenda, she jumps in and helps out all the time, but they never talk about, oh, she's a great leader. She's been able to make sure this team meets their deadlines. She's helped impact turnover and retention in our organization because of her leadership ability. She has helped other people expand their skills. She's a multiplier, right? She gives them opportunities to grow and develop. We don't hear those things. And I think those are the things I think that women do so well, but they're not recognized for that, right? So this lack of visibility can impede on a woman's ability to be an influential decision maker and gain support around specific initiatives that they're involved in the organization. And then I'll say the last one I want to address today is just our leadership styles. I think women lead differently than men, and they should. And I think all people lead. We all should be celebrated on our ability to lead, especially if we're growing the organization and we're being more innovative and creative. But I think if you're a different kind of leader, right, these stereotypes about leadership styles can box us in, like what a leader should be, how they should communicate, right? What sorts of personality types make great leaders. And what we found is we think that people who are more extroverted make better leaders, but actually studies show that more introverted leaders, women bring a sense of calmness to decision making, which makes for better decisions. When women are in leadership roles, companies are more profitable. They identify more markets to serve. People are actually happier when women are part of the leadership organization. And what we want to do is make sure that they can still do that in a place where we're creating psychological safety for 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 everyone in the workplace, but in particularly for women. And back to my original question, is our leadership roles and very visible leadership roles for women, is it a safe place or does it put a target on our back? And that's what I don't want to see happen, right? I feel like once you're in the management ranks, because we typically are so good at getting work done, completing tasks, taking on more work, but it's when you really get into those titles where you are a visible leader, does it put a target on our back? And sadly, sometimes I think it does. Sometimes I think, getting the education and all the credentialing doesn't actually open doors for us to be welcomed into leadership. It challenges us more. And what we find is that women are constantly questioned about their decisions, questions about conclusions to information, right? We're talking about a particular topic or solving a problem, and we find that women are questioned. And we find higher degrees of that even with women of color, right? Black women and Hispanic, Latina, and Asian women are questioned more about their expertise than any other demographic in the workplace. And I always find it interesting because you hired me because of my expertise, but you challenged me on it every step of the way. And so, how can we create a place for women to thrive in organizations? And I think what we have to do is put parameters in where we can honestly check people for their bias. But we have to be able to say to people, why are you asking the woman this question? Right? When we ask women questions in work, like, why are you asking her to take notes? Hey, have you ever seen like, oh, Jen, will you take notes? Well, Jen's a manager, just like the rest of the managers at the table. Why are we asking Jen that? And Jen needs to be able to be in a safe place where she can say, well, why do you want me to take notes? And I think that's an important question for us to be able to ask. And why was she chosen? Because I will say, because I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt and grace, and I'm a glass half full kind of woman, that maybe they don't even recognize in themselves that they've asked Jen to take notes. Right? Maybe they didn't even recognize that they do this. Um, because sometimes as women we do it, and then sometimes as women we sign up to take the notes, we sign up to do the administrative tasks, either because we're really great at it or we're good at it, or we're willing to do it. But how does that reflect on us being seen as a leader? And I want to share a personal story kind of as I wrap up, and feel free to raise your hand if you want to add to this conversation. And come up on stage. I would love to get your insights. We're going to continue this. We're going to have a part two of this and get into a little bit more deeper conversation. This is kind of an overview because I wanted to introduce this concept of double blind dilemma because I know a lot of people are not familiar with it or the glass cliff. But one of the things I want to share, I've been sitting on a board and I've wanted to be on this board for a long time. And I do know and understand that this board has, and this industry has a significant amount of challenges around misogyny and the patriarchal ideologies and gender bias. It's in higher education. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's a higher ed. But it's a board, and this was part of the philanthropic arm of this board. And I am passionate about this university, and I am passionate about the work. And I've spent, 5 years working on this board and moved up into the role of the vice chair of the board. The chair of the board is a man and someone that I know, and I known him for many years. We never worked together, only been social. So a couple of drinks, a couple of times a year, we'd see each other at conferences. We talk, about family, career, that kind of thing. So we've been working together for the last 3 years when he joined the board, and I actually invited him to apply to be on the board, and most of the board members are people that I reached out to, and they've gone through our nominations process and interview process, and they made the board. So anyway, but I most recently resigned from that board, and it was a painful and challenging decision because I was passionate about the work. I spent a lot of my time, personal time, and my intellectual knowledge, my relationships, kind of building this board and getting our processes in order, and just doing a significant amount of things to get us and using my past experience. And the reason I left the board was exactly what we're talking about today. It the chair, in my opinion, and my impact, my relationship with him had gotten to a place where it was extremely toxic. No matter what I said verbally, what I wrote, he constantly challenged me. The last email he sent, it had other people on it, and a really good friend of mine. I've known him since 19. I was 19. We went to college together, and he said to me, "That email, Jennine, was to put you in your place." Now, this was a man telling me. He's like, "That's what that email was written to try to put you in your place." That response, he said, and it was uncalled for, it was unnecessary, and which I knew. And I said, for a year I had been dealing with this, but because of my passion and my dedication, I've never quit anything. I wanted to stay. And I tell people, don't stay anywhere where your well-being is under attack. And I mean that passionate. I've told my clients that that we coach. I've told executives and organizations that no one should stay at their companies or any organization where their well-being is under attack. And I felt personally attacked. There were moments where I couldn't sleep. I was really upset because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the reason you're the chair. I brought you onto this board. I nominated you for these roles, right? To get you into this place, which I don't feel anybody owes me anything for that. But it tells you, right, a lot about when people start working with women, there is an expectation that we should be docile, that our opinions should be tapered, or maybe not even shared, right? We shouldn't have opposing views to some male leaders. I don't think all men are this way because I've worked with some amazing men. I've been mentored and sponsored by amazing men. Most of our client contacts are men, and I have great relationships with them, and they get it, right? They do the work to understand and identify their own biases, and they are involved and connected to women who they are getting reciprocal mentoring from about these sorts of issues. But one of the things that I know for sure, even in my own experience, an experience that I never expected to have after 20 years of board leadership experience, right? Being a business owner, working in leadership roles in organizations, that I would be leaving something because of the way that I've been treated. And the other part of that was I felt unsupported. by other people who witness this behavior. And that's what makes it toxic, right? You have a leader who is toxic in their communication style and how, and maybe even defensive, right? Other people challenge, like, well, maybe he felt defensive by your questions, but my questions were not personal. They were about the subject, right? About the work that we have to do as a governing body of this organization. And so I share that to say that it is a problem. I think a lot of women can relate to what I've just shared in my own personal experience. And it's, you also end up in this sense where you feel a sense of grief and grieving because you have to make a decision to leave. You have to resign from something because it's just not safe, and you can't see a way out because if others aren't willing to come to your defense publicly, and that's back to psychological safety, right? Someone can call out bias, they can support someone who is in a situation where they feel that they've been mistreated or they're in a toxic work situation and relationship in the workplace or even in a volunteer organization, and others are there to support them. And so I just I wanted to share that with you because the reason I talk about this is because even I have dealt with this. I see how it shows up in the workplace. We have some dynamic, brilliant women who are primed to lead organizations, but they need the support. They need support from their organizations. They need support from other women in the workplace, from their peers, to be successful because we can't do our jobs if we're constantly fighting off bullets that are being shot at us over things just because people don't think we should be there because we're a woman, because people don't like the fact that we are assertive and decisive, that we have opposing views, and they want to undermine our work. But I want to leave this on a high note. What I know for sure is that when women are represented in organizations, they are more profitable. The morale is actually higher. Women have been proven to be more effective leaders. They are strategic and they are dedicated to their organizations. Hence why we stay so long, even after poor and mistreatment in the organizations. And so I want to encourage those of you who are joining us on the podcast when this re-airs, as well as those of you who are here with us live on LinkedIn, is to stay the course and create communities and have these sorts of conversations in your organization, not to spiral, but to find solutions, to challenge the status quo around women leadership. And if you see a woman, even if you don't like it or it's not your approach, who is decisive and determined and is, working hard, have her back. Pull her aside and say, you know what, I support you. You don't have to tell her that she's not doing it the way you would. Just say, I support you. And ask her, what can I do to make sure that, we get more women in leadership roles? Because it's not just up to men to make sure that women are successful as leaders. It is actually up to women to ensure that women are successful leaders, that they're in roles and we're fairly compensated in those roles, and that we break the myths and signs of toxic leadership and gender ideologies at work. And we can put women in roles where they can be successful, they can have the resources that they need, and they're not stressed because we have way too many women who are negatively impacted by stress through that leads to some very terrible things because of how they are treated in the workplace. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We want to introduce you a resource that we know that will impact your life and your career. It's a book, Unstuck and Unstoppable. It is the ultimate guide to overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals. With practical tips and inspiring stories, the book will help you leverage your value, increase your visibility, and gain recognition to accelerate your career. Take action towards getting the career that you deserve. This book was named Best Career Book of 2022. Get your copy anywhere you buy books, either on Amazon or at our website at unstuckandunstoppablebook.com. Thank you for joining the Untoxic Boss Podcast today. We are here and on a mission to help people stop being a jerk at work. We'll see you here again next week.